So back to antique fairy tales. Who's over here? Oh, what eyes you have, cried the delighted giant. You at least can see. I do not know how often I have slain those who have insulted her by saying she was but dried bones. You are a fine young man, and I will help you. So saying, he laid down the bones with great tenderness, and snatching up the huge brass vessels, carried them up again, and replaced them with such ease that it was all done by the time that Ram Singh had reached the open air with the smaller ones. Now, said the giant, you have pleased me, and you may ask me one favor, and whatever you wish, I will do it for you. Perhaps you would like me to show you where lies buried treasure of the dead. Where lies buried the treasure of dead kings. That was worded weird. He added eagerly. Get some tea. So yeah, that's the picture. I think that's the only picture in this one. But Ram Singh shook his head at the mention of buried wealth. The favor that I would ask, said he, is that you would leave off haunting this well, so that men may go in and out and obtain water. Perhaps the giant expected some favor more difficult to grant, for his face brightened, and he promised to depart at once. And as Ram Singh went off through the gathering darkness with his precious burden of water, he beheld the giant striding away with the bones of his dead wife in his arms. Great was the wonder and rejoicing in the camp when Ram Singh returned with the water. He never said anything, however, about his adventure with the giant, but merely told the Raja that there was nothing to prevent the well being used, and used it was. And nobody ever saw any more of the giant. The Raja was so pleased with the bearing of Ram Singh that he ordered the Wazir to give the young man to him in exchange for one of his own servants. So Ram Singh became the Raja's attendant. And as the days went by, the king became more and more delighted with the youth, because, mindful of the old Guru's third counsel, he was always honest and spoke the truth. He grew in favor rapidly, until at last the Raja made him his treasurer, and thus he reached a high place in the court and had wealth and power in his hands. Unluckily, the Raja had a brother who was a very bad man, and his brother thought that if he could win the young treasurer over to himself, he might by this means manage to steal, little by little, any of the king's treasure which he needed. Then, with plenty of money, he would bribe the soldiers and some of the Raja's counselors, head a rebellion, dethrone, and kill his brother, and reign himself instead. He was too wary, of course, to tell Ram Singh all of these wicked plans, but he began by flattering him. I need some more tea. He began by flattering him whenever he saw him, and at last offered him his daughter in marriage. But Ram Singh remembered the fourth counsel of the old Guru: never try to appear the equal of those above him in station. Therefore he respectfully declined the great honor of marrying a princess. Of course, the prince, baffled at the very beginning of his enterprise, was furious and determined to work Ram Singh's ruin. And entering the Raja's presence, he told him a story about Ram Singh having spoken insulting words of his sovereign and of his daughter. What it was all about, nobody knew, and as it was not true, the wicked prince did not know either. But the Raja grew very angry and red in the face as he listened, and declared that until the treasurer's head was cut off, neither he nor the princess nor his brother would eat or drink. But, added he, I do not wish anyone to know that this was done by my desire, and anyone who mentions the subject will be severely punished. And with this the prince was forced to be content. Then the Raja sent for an officer of his guard, and told him to take some soldiers and ride at once to a tower which was situated just outside the town, and if anyone should come to inquire when the building was going to be finished, or should ask any other questions about it, the officer must chop his head off and bring it to him, As for the body, that could be buried on the spot. The old officer thought these instructions rather odd, but it was no business of his, so he saluted and went off to do his master's bidding. Early in the morning, the Rajah, who had not slept all night, sent for Ram Singh and bade him go to the new hunting tower and ask people there how it was getting on and when it was going to be finished, and to hurry back with the answer. Anyway, away went Ram Singh upon his errand, but on the road he was passing a little temple on the outskirts of the city. He heard someone inside reading aloud, and remembering the Guru's 5th counsel, he just stepped inside and sat down to listen for a minute. He did not mean to stay longer, but became so deeply interested in the wisdom of the teacher that he sat and sat and sat, while the sun rose higher and higher. In the meantime, the wicked prince, who dared not disobey the Rajah's command, was feeling very hungry, and as for the princess, she was quietly crying in the corner waiting for news of Ram Singh's death, so that she might eat her breakfast. Hours passed, and stare as he might from the window, no messenger could be seen. At last the prince could bear it no longer, and hastily disguising himself so that no one should recognize him, he jumped on a horse and galloped out to the hunting tower, where the Rajah had told him that the execution was to take place. But when he got there was no execution going. There was only some men engaged in building, and a number of soldiers idly watching them. He forgot that he had disguised himself and that no one would know him, so riding up he cried out, "Now then, you men, why are you idling about here instead of finishing what you came to do? When is it to be done?" At his words the soldiers looked at the commanding officer, who was standing a little apart from the rest. Unperceived by the prince, he made a slight sign, a sword flashed in the sun, and off flew his head to the ground beneath. As part of the prince's disguise had been a thick beard, the men did not recognize the dead man as the Rajah's brother, but they wrapped his head in a cloth and buried the body as their commander bade them. When this was ended, the officer took the cloth and rode off in the direction of the palace. Meanwhile, the Rajah came home from his council, and to his great surprise found neither head nor brother awaiting him. As time passed on, he became uneasy, and thought that he had better go himself and see what the matter was. So ordering his horse, he rode off alone. It happened that just as the Rajah came near to the temple where Ram Singh still sat, the young treasurer, hearing the sound of a horse's hoofs, looked over his shoulder and saw that the rider was the Rajah himself. Feeling much ashamed of himself for having forgotten his errand, he jumped up and hurried out to meet his master, who reined up his horse and seemed very surprised, as indeed he was, to see him. At the moment there arrived the officer of the guard carrying his parcel. He saluted the Rajah gravely, and dismounting, laid the bundle in the road and began to undo the wrappings, whilst the Rajah watched him with wonder and interest when the last string was undone and the head of his brother was displayed to his view. The Rajah sprang from his horse and caught the soldier by the arm. As soon as he could speak, he questioned the man as to what had occurred, and little by little a dark suspicion darted through him. Then, briefly telling the soldier that he had done well, the Rajah drew Ram Singh to one side, and in a few minutes learned from him how, in attending the Guru's council, he had delayed to do the king's message. In the end, the Rajah found from some papers the proofs of his dead brother's treachery, and Ram Singh established his innocence and integrity. He continued to serve the Rajah for many years with unswerving fidelity, and married a maiden of his own rank in life, with whom he lived happily, dying at last, honored and loved by all men. Sons were born to him, and in time to them also he taught the 5 wise sayings of the old Guru. That's it.